Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Mukesh Pareek, and this is my second live class on Coleridge. In my last video on Coleridge, I talked about the basic works and some biographical details of Coleridge. And in this video, I'm going to talk about some important poems written by S.T. Coleridge. As you all know that S.T. Coleridge collaborated with William Wordsworth in his famous work, Lyrical Ballads, and most of the important poems which are commonly anthologized throughout India are Kubla Khan, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Christabel. But at times there are four or five other poems which are very, very important because they establish the faith of Coleridge in nature, in the Unitarian aspect, plus they bring forth in front of us S.T. Coleridge as a Jacobite. It means a kind of radical, a kind of left-wing thinker, and these poems also, let us know about the inner aspects of S.T. Coleridge. For example, that as you all know that he took for himself the task of writing poems on supernatural element present around us. So the element of religion, the element of going into the past, the sort of nostalgia which is present in the poems. He's talking about his faith in nature. The faith in nature means here that Coleridge, when he writes something about nature, he most of the times does not describe nature. He wants to show his passion to become one with nature. So these aspects are very, very important. And with this note, introductory note, I would like to start with the poem Dejection and Ode. As you all know that in my last video, I talked about this poem. It was published in 1802. And this poem, at least there are twice or thrice the term lady comes in this poem, oh lady. So it is said that earlier the writer thought like he addressed to Wordsworth, and later on he, when both the writers were on bad terms, they fought with each other. Then I think he omitted the word Wordsworth, and then he put the word lady there. So it was written to Sarah Hutchinson. She was not his wife by that time, and then he's showing his love towards Sarah Hutchinson in this poem. But then you may ask me a question like why the title is Dejection and Ode. So friends, you should also understand that Dejection and Ode is in the category of a kind of ode in which the writer is talking about the failure of the writing abilities. As we all know, sometimes, particularly, you can understand this today in today's scenario in a better manner. Like we are in quarantine period, and we don't feel a kind of hurry, to go out. So everything is in a relaxed mood, and we are less productive in the sense whatever work we do. So sometimes it happens that through the personal circumstances, someone can feel like he does not feel to produce something, and because being a writer, S.T. Coleridge at times because of his ailments, his diseases, and that he used to take laudanum, the mixture of opium and alcohol. So sometimes he used to feel a kind of depression. And this poem, talks about that. But there is an inherent paradox in the poem. As you all know that this world famous poem he wrote, but he's claiming in the poem that he does not feel the energy to write. I would also like to link this poem with the Ode to West Wind written by Shelley. You all know that in that poem also Shelley claims that drive my thoughts like dead dried leaves. And Shelley claims in that poem that he does not feel uh, that much energized to write something, and he feels that creatively is dead. But then, if he is creatively that much dead, then how could he be able to write that famous poem? So it happens with writers, like they veil it, they cover it that they are not feeling well, but actually. I think they are at the height of their creative energies. So this is about dejection and ode. Apart from that, what I want to inform you regarding this poem, there are certain lines which are very famous and very close to anybody who reads the poem. Uh, for example, let me read few lines. Well, if the bard was weather-wise, who made the grand old ballad of Sir Patrick Spens. This starting two lines tell us that there is something special with this poem. It is said that this has already been asked as a question in exam, that Sir Patrick Spens was a famous ballad writer, and all the romantic writers, they were reinventing, they were rediscovering the ballads, which is considered to be the folk art of telling some story through poem. So, in this poem, the writer first of all talks about that storm is about to come, and this night so tranquil now will not go hence, unroused by winds that ply a busier trade than those which mold yon cloud in lazy flakes, or the dull sobbing draught that moans and rakes upon the strings of this aeolian lute. So, in the beginning of the poem, he talks about Sir Patrick Spens. Then comes the most important lines like, "O lady, in this wan and heartless mood, to other thoughts by yonder throstle wooed, all this long eve so balmy and serene, have I been gazing on the western sky and its peculiar tint of yellow green, and still I gaze, and with how blank an eye, and those thin clouds above in flakes and bars that give away their motion to the stars." So these lines are important because these lines show the kind of barrenness he feels inside him. Then in next few lines are also very important, that my genial spirits fail. These lines have already been asked in exam. My genial spirits fail, and what can these avail to lift the smothering weight from off my breast? It were a vain endeavor, though I should gaze forever on that green light that lingers in the west. I may not hope from outward forms to win the passion and the life whose fountains are within. These are most famous lines of this poem, because he claims that one should not wait to get aroused, to get motivated, to get inspired, to write about something, by looking at the outward nature. These lines are famous because he says that, I may not hope from outward forms to win the passion and the life whose fountains are within. He says that fountain. So I hope you will go and read this poem. I tell you like how you can develop an interest in reading poems and all. Start reading them first of all. Start reading them loudly to yourself, and then start taking interest. You will find that you will get interest. I would also like to read the last part of the poem. Joy, lady, is the spirit and the power which wedding nature to us gives in dower. Dower means dowry. He says that nature has already given us. We are the part of nature. We are nature, and joy is an integral, inherent, original part of human being. Means, in a rhetorical question standpoint, the writer has raised a question. First of all, he says in this ode, Dejection and Ode, that I'm feeling helpless regarding creativity, but because I'm sad, he says. But then he himself gives a solution at the end of the poem. He says that the fountains of joy are within us, and if we feel joyful from within, we can write, we can create things. I reread these lines. Joy, lady, is the spirit and the power which wedding nature to us gives in dower. A new earth and a new heaven undreamt of by the sensual and the proud. He says that the people who are sensuous in the sense, you know, too much attached to the sexuality, and one who those who are proud in the sense, in the outward sense, like of their achievements, they cannot dream of these things, which you can feel if you go inward. So this poem is all about getting to, he's teaching us, like, we should become more introvert if you want to feel the beauties of nature, the kind of resplendence present in nature, the divinity present in nature, which makes divinity in nature makes us feel that nature and we are one and the same thing. Now, this is what, to my knowledge, makes St. Coleridge a Neoplatonist. Because if you go and read about Neoplatonism, you will come to know that they were followers of Plotinus, and they used to feel that there is a Unitarian feeling of nature, integrity of we and nature both are one. So, undreamt of by the sensual and the proud, joy is the sweet voice, joy the luminous cloud, we in ourselves rejoice. So this way we understand that what is the exact message of the poem Rejection and Ode. I would love to read the last two lines again. Joy is the sweet voice, joy the luminous cloud, we in ourselves rejoice. So here you can understand that anywhere, whether a Christian writes or a Muslim writes, or a Hindu writes or a Jew writes, anybody who writes, if he feels that he is a part of nature and feels that he's connected with nature, can understand this poem very, very easily. Now, as I've already talked about, that this poem can be linked with ode to immortality, Wordsworth's ode to immortality, where the writer feels that in somewhere there is a connection, and the writer feels that Wordsworth, I'm talking about Wordsworth. Wordsworth feels that he has some invisible connection with nature, and somewhere he's not body, a soul which is permanent. The same kind of thing is there in this poem. And next, one more thing from examination point of view, I would like to tell you that this is a Pindaric ode. A Pindaric ode is a kind of irregular ode. Next comes, I don't want to extend this lecture to detail, but I would like to inform you so many different things, so that the things, when you listen to this or you watch this video again, you will develop an interest. This is my aim. And second thing, that you will also be able to solve some questions in exam. Now I come to the Rime of Ancient Mariner. As you all know, this poem is divided into 7 parts. It was the first poem in the lyrical ballads. But I would like to say that one thing which most of the students don't know, that Rime of the Ancient Mariner, that in the 7 parts the writer has created a wedding guest, and there is a mariner who is very old, and then he talks about his experience when he killed an albatross, and very miraculously he was saved by someone, and then he is quite guilty conscious that one should not feel aloof from nature, and because he killed an albatross, and then he felt that nature was angry with him. So there also he gives a message, like if we love nature, if we pray, loving ourselves, loving nature means praying. That is the message of this poem. But from examination point of view, I would like to tell you that in 1798, when lyrical ballads were published, writer wrote an argument in the beginning of the poem, and I would like to read this argument. But then when he was publishing Biographia Literaria, St. Coleridge, he in 1817 republished this poem, and then he replaced that argument with an epigraph from Thomas Burnet, who was famous for writing Archaeologiae Philosophiae. So I will be reading from these two things. I will first of all read for you the argument, that in 1798, when he published this poem in lyrical ballads, this was the argument in the starting of the poem. How a ship having passed the line was driven by storm to the cold country towards the South Pole, and how from thence she made her course to the tropical latitude of the great Pacific Ocean, and of the strange things that befell, and in what manner the ancient mariner. The spelling of the ancient mariner is also a bit altered, in the first edition or in the first publication. That is ANCYENT, ancient. Marinier, Mariner, came back to his own country. This was the argument published in 1798. But then he published, when he published the poem in 1817 for Biographia Literaria, he wrote this. I repeat, he replaced the argument, and he replaced it with an epigraph written by Thomas Burnet. Thomas Burnet was famous for a book, Archaeologiae Philosophicae. What is the translation of this? I can easily believe that there are more invisible than visible beings in the universe. This Thomas Burnet says. But who will declare to us the family of all these, and acquaint us with the agreements, differences, and peculiar talents which are to be found among them? What do they do, and where do they live? It is true, human wit has always desired a knowledge of these things, though it has never yet attained it. I will own that it is very profitable sometimes to contemplate in the mind, as in a draught, the image of the greater and better world, lest the soul, being accustomed to the trifles of this present life, should contract itself too much and altogether rest in mean cogitations. But in the meantime, we must take care to keep to the truth and observe moderation, that we may distinguish certain things and day from night. Now, having read this, I would like to say that the writer is yesterday in a video on Coleridge, I explained to you that St. Coleridge is far more an influential poet for the transcendental poets or the writers of America. I also want to inform you that if you read, with the calm and cool, with some equanimity in your mind, without any disturbance. Suppose you listen to me through this video, or you yourself go and read this poem. You will come to know, and with this ultra modern scientific or pseudo scientific society like we and you, a student can ask a question like, because we are in the habit of killing animals, butchering animals, eating meats. I don't eat meat, I'm a vegetarian. But I want to tell you that the maximum the population of the world, they eat non-veg. Do we ever think about what happens to these animals when they are butchered, and how much compassion we feel with the outer world. Outer world does not mean plants, trees, sun, moon. It is a kind of pantheism, I think, a kind of paganism these writers are famous for. These are romantic writers who are praising nature, but not for nothing. They are praising nature where somewhere they are giving a message. And I bet the time will come when these writers will be seriously researched, and the writers or the people who are writing these days for nothing. I think they are writing for identity and for postmodernism and all these things. I don't find any essence in these things which the modern people are doing. Somewhere I think we will go back to these writers and will try to understand what they are saying. They're saying that something supernatural exists around us, and we have ever wanted, always wanted to know about these things, about the supernatural world around us. But then the rationality of our mind, the logical, scientific mind in us, claim that it's a futile thing. But through this poem, the writer says that it somewhere, the supernatural quality present in his poems, they have some truth hidden in them. And if we try to feel, if we become more inward, then we would be able to understand the importance of love, importance of prayer, and importance of the connectivity between collectively we are all same, And I think in today's period when virus has tortured the whole world, I think this is the best time to understand this poem in a new light. Next, I would love to talk about Frost at Midnight, another poem published in 1798, and it's a part of the conversation poems. And Frost at Midnight is about Coleridge's son Hartley. And this is important because in this poem, the writer, as I in my earlier video, in my last video, I think I told you that Coleridge did not belong to a very rich family, and he had some problems in his childhood. So this poem is about his unhappy childhood. And he again, this poem is also romantic in nature. Romantic does not mean here ungrounded, unfounded ideas. Romantic here mean to say that those ideas where the writer feels something about nature, and then these have certain sensibilities in these writers. They are super duper consciousness level, where they want to convey that by linking ourselves with nature, somewhere to become the child of nature. This word he has used in this poem for his son Hartley. He says that again, this poem is very much Christian in spirit. There is a concept of Neoplatonism. Those who don't understand Neoplatonism should understand that they are followers of Plotinus, and they feel that we are all are connected. Nature, living, non-living things, all are connected. Okay, and through this poem, the writer wants to convey that if his boy becomes the child of nature, he gives himself a task, like I should raise my child in such a way that he will become the child of nature. It means he will feel connected and with nature, and then he will be feeling less miserable, and he will feel less depression, what writer is feeling by that time. And he's against the philosophical contributions of the philosophers of that age, for example William Godwin. So the poem is again very, very important. And what this poem is famous for, his childhood experiences. Is telling to his friend about his childhood experiences. And in this poem, the view of nature with the poem has a strong Christian element, as I told you. In that Coleridge believed that nature represents a physical presence of God's word, and that the poem is steeped in Coleridge's understanding of Neoplatonism. It was well received by critics by that time also. And apart from that, I would also like to talk about another poem, France an Ode. Friends, you all know that I told you that this writer was a Jacobin or a left. Jacobin was a term by that time. The term it corresponds to a kind of club opened in France, where they were because when French Revolution occurred in France, obviously the people who were against king and monarchy, they started French Revolution. So these people were called Jacobins, and today we can understand by the word radical, or we can use the word left. Left means when we say that all are equal. But I would like to explain this in some deeper sense. In Italy, it is a common news these days that the left wing people there, I think they're some political leaders are left wing leaders there in Italy. And when coronavirus spread there, they said that Chinese have a strong presence there in Italy, and they some of them were from Wuhan also. Then people of Italy started getting away from the Chinese people. Then these left-wing people said that we will hug and we will kiss these Chinese, they are our brothers. And then the condition here in Italy, I think it crossed the the counting of 20,000 deaths. What I want to convey, that left-wing people say that if someone is behaving nonsense, still you consider him as brother, or you should consider that we are one people. But then a day will come in your life when you will that myth will break, and you will realize that there are bad things in the world, or certain ideals are on the ideals, or the concept of equality, liberty, and fraternity is only a concept. For example, we all are quarantined these days. Roads are empty, but rapes are still occurring. I read in the newspaper yesterday, and tortures are being done. Burglary is still the common scene, and so what I want to convey that the writer got uh, totally disheartened, by the violent form French Revolution created. Something meaningful thing, and very idealist thing, and these writers, radical writers, they dreamed of a world where equality will prevail. But then later on, so this France and Ode, actually what happened that France attacked Switzerland, and with this plan. The dreams were shattered, of these writers. So Coleridge, as you know, that was an early supporter of French Revolution, and he was totally against the British Prime Minister William Pitt. But when this attack was there, he was very sad, and then he wrote this poem. And the poem was published in 1798, and Morning Post a kind of newspaper. Then comes another poem in the same category, Fears in Solitude. Fears in Solitude is again, that was written in 1798, and it is one of the conversation poems. I read about this in my earlier video. And this is again, actually, once France also threatened England also with an attack. So then again, the writer was, feeling a kind of fear not in that sense, fear in the loss of humanity, loss of values, loss of or the shattering of the dreams. So these painful feelings are there. But then he shows kind of patriotism in this poem. I would like to read some lines from this poem. O native Britain, O my mother isle, how should thou prove aught else but dear and holy to me, who from thy lakes and mountain hills, thy clouds, thy quiet dales, thy rocks and seas, have drunk in all my intellectual life, all sweet sensations, all ennobling thoughts, all adoration of the God in nature. This is again God in nature, that Neoplatonist idea. All lovely and all honorable things, all lovely things, all things are lovely, honorable, all things are honorable. Whatever makes this mortal spirit feel the joy and greatness of its future being. So there is an oxymoron in these lines, mortal spirit, because we all know that spirit is not mortal. But I think writer wants to convey that I love my country, and I hate that country, one who invades England. Then there is also a poem, Songs of the Pixies, Pixies. It was again, composed, quite 5 years earlier, than the other poems. It was composed in 1793, and it was about his childhood home near Pixies. And the poem begins with a note that explains the connection between Pixies and his home. Actually, there was a wood-covered hill, a kind of excavation, which was called Pixies Parlor. So this poem is all about this. Now, as I have already told you, that St. Coleridge is famous for giving idea of equality of man and nature and the divinity. Second thing, supernaturalism. Third thing, willing suspension of disbelief. Fourth thing, in the last video I also talked about like primary and secondary imagination. So with these certain ideas, they have been asking us certain questions. At the end of the video, I'll be also talking about 3 major dramas written by this writer. Out of these 3, I think every time they have asked us questions in net exam. So first of all, let me read some lines from this poem, Songs of the Pixies. By indolence. Okay, one thing I would like to inform before I read the lines. This is the poem famous in which he has claimed that he is a bard. Bard means poet of poets, a visionary poet. And he has called himself a youthful bard, one who has not achieved success. So somewhere this poem is, I can link this poem, with Milton's sonnet on his 23rd birthday. where he feels that he would do something great in his life. So somewhere this poem, when he did not meet Wordsworth, or say he was not famous, he was not published. By that time he wrote this poem. So I read, by indolence and fancy brought, he says about himself that I am a child who is indolent. Indolent means lazy, but in the productive sense. Fancy, imagination, a youthful bard, unknown to fame, there is inverted commas, woos the queen of solemn thoughts, and heaves the gentle misery of a sigh, gazing with tearful eye, as round our sandy grot appear many a rudely sculptured name to pensive memory dear, weaving gay dreams of sunny tinctured hue, we glance before his view. Over his hushed soul, our soothing witcheries shed, and twine the future garland round his head. So the starting four lines are important. Then I would like to come on Kubla Khan. The subtitle, there are two subtitles of this poem: A Vision in a Dream or A Fragment. I have already talked about this poem in the last video, so I will not talk much. Then I will come on Christabel. Christabel is a very easy poem, friends. In this, I would simply like to say one thing, that he has created two women. And then there is a dichotomy in the poem. The writer, I would also like to inform you that these romantic writers have either a very soft and idealistic attitude towards women, or they have seen women, in a very negative shade. In an idealistic way, they look towards nature in a feminine way, but their overall attitude is very negative towards women. That you should go and search something on internet, and you just read a research article. You will come to know if you really want to become professors. Because my videos are meant only for those serious students who really want to become professors. Just to know a topic, or just to get involved with the personal talks of a teacher. These students are not meant to come or visit my videos, because they will be feeling very bored, because here I simply talk. I don't waste a single moment of my student. So if you really want to become professor, want my contribution in your life, better you just go and search some articles and keep devoting yourself in reading and improving your mind. In Christabel, as I have been telling you, that there is a kind of duality, kind of binary as presented. Christabel, you have seen, always praying, soft. If you see, like at the starting of the poem, she is praying. She has gone out of the castle to pray. And when she comes back to her room, there is an angel. That lamp is in the form of an angel. So she doesn't talk about sex. But Geraldine, on the other hand, is associated with horse, the image of horse. Horse is power, sexuality. And then her physical attributes are also, telling about her sexuality. Might be there is a theme of lesbianism in the poem that you have to understand. And then she, takes off her clothes. Then she is associated with the image of fire. Okay, so this is my contribution, to your understanding of the poem Christabel. And the poem is an incomplete one. There comes the references of army. The poem has an element of say medievalism, which is an attribute of romantic poetry. And there is a character, Sir Leoline. And so this is all about this poem. I don't want to speak more now. At the end of this video, I would like to talk about three dramas of Coleridge. First is The Fall of Robespierre. Sorry, The Fall of Robespierre. This question has appeared in the exam. It's a three-act play. Writer Samuel Coleridge wrote in 1794 with the collaboration of Robert Southey. Okay. Then Robespierre, you should be aware about. It is about in this poem, in this drama, Robespierre has been shown as a tyrant. And second play is Osorio. Osorio is the first title. Later on, it is a blank verse tragedy, and later on, because this play was rejected, on the Drury Lane theater. So the writer, after 16 years, revised this play, and its title was Remorse. So sometimes they ask us a question on remorse, and sometimes they can ask you a question like, what was its earlier title? It was Osorio, and then it really was successful play when after 17 years it was 16 years it was played. Last play is Zapolya, Zapolya. Subtitle is A Christmas Tale. It is a verse play, and this was also not very famous, and it was rejected. So friends, as you all know the limitations of these live kind of classes, I'm never happy with these kind of classes, but still with the intention that my students will be benefited, or say I can give some food for thought throughout the day. And kindly wait for my next video, and I would like to ask you at the end of this video that please watch these videos completely, and kindly watch them twice and thrice, so that you people can understand the ideas. And that's it for today. Thank you very much.